Today, we're breaking down the final position group of our best ball and redraft, kind of way too early rankings here, going through the tight end landscape, the tier rankings that we have over here now. You guys can use these over on Underdog Fantasy. Right now, you can draft teams, or you can kind of use this to get prepped for your home redraft leagues, or if you're Dynasty contenders, obviously we're going to be focused mainly on the outcome of the 2024 NFL season with these guys. So let's not waste any time, Danny. Let's talk about the first two guys. Usually, last year, Travis Kelce was late first, early second round pick, maybe mid second at the very latest. This year, we're getting a little bit of a discount on the tight end position, given the depth of that position this year, more so than any others. We've been talking about it from a dynasty lens that, it's hard to click the button in like the third, fourth, fifth round of a dynasty startup on a tight end, knowing that there actually is solid options later on. So starting with the first two guys here, we got Sam Laporta and Travis Kelce. With Sam Laporta, of course, he had probably the best tight end rookie season we've ever seen. When you think about tight end 3 in points per game, 14.1 PPR points per game at 22 years old, a rookie tight end on a very good team, a team that we expect him to be a top 2 target, team that's a top 5 scoring offense. Top 6 in target share last year, yards per out run, target rate, pretty much any metric you can point to. Sam Laporta was outstanding. He scores 10 touchdowns, 4th highest graded tight end as a rookie. Again, this is something that is just totally unheard of. We don't see rookies do this.
100%. And with what Sam Laporta did, we usually see by year 2, by year 3, that's usually when the tight end position starts to blossom in the NFL. What Sam Laporta did is not common. We were seeing a rookie tight end legitimately be the number 2 pass catching weapon in his own offense. And on top of that, we know his offense is going to be very damn good yet again. Ben Johnson back in Detroit, 14 of their 17 games actually being played in a dome this upcoming year. We know Goff, while he's not an elite top 5 quarterback, is the type of quarterback, like I mentioned in the Monra segment when we were recording wide receivers, that can support fantasy success in his offense. So with Sam Laporta, he's a really rock solid projection. He finished with about 900 receiving yards, 10 receiving touchdowns last year. You go into year 2, a little bit more progression. We could very well see him enter his Kelce-esque run if he's able to improve upon that rookie season, which, given his talent level, given his role in that offense, is very well in that range of outcomes. So getting a young, appreciating tight end at times on underdog drafts at the end of the 3rd round is a really nice spot for what I think Sam Laporta can end up materializing into.
Yeah, can you poke holes in Sam Laporta? Realistically, I guess if you're a massive Jameson Williams truther, maybe you think he's going to take a step back from targets. Maybe Jahmyr Gibbs takes a big step forward in targets. But man, this offense is going to be really good. Even if Gibbs and Jameson Williams take step forward in their career, Laporta was a young player last year, and he kind of, really earned those targets. We know Amon-Ra is going to get his. Not to mention, again, very clean projection. Like you said, he's an elite athlete. He's in a great offense. There's really nothing that can go wrong for the Detroit Lions. Even if Goff were to miss some time, Hendon Hooker's a decent backup. There's pretty much nothing that I can poke holes in with Sam Laporta, and that's making me think that he should start to creep into the 2nd round, but that's not really where he's going given the depth of the position. So it's really awesome if you could start off your draft with, say, Tyreek Hill, swing back and get Josh Jacobs, or even potentially a Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor type if they slide to you, and then Sam Laporta at the top of the 3rd round. You just really set yourself up for success in your fantasy drafts. And speaking of setting yourself up for success in years past in your fantasy drafts, Travis Kelce finishes as a tight end 1 again last year, and he didn't have a great Travis Kelce season. We hold this guy to such a high standard that, 14 or 15 points per game seems like terrible for him, especially considering what he did in 2022 when he was just by far and away the dominant alpha of that position group. But he was still tight end 1 in points per game. He had an elite target share, top, 3 target share at the tight end position, 3rd in EPA, top 3 in yards per out run. We know he's going to dominate the position, but he only had 5 touchdowns. And I think that's the difference between Travis Kelce's projection this year and kind of what he did last year, because a lot of things went wrong for him last year. Obviously, comes back on a 2-year deal, so he's still motivated. They want to get to 3-peat. No NFL team in history has been able to do that. And he also was banged up last year. Patrick Mahomes didn't have a great receiving core, and I think you can argue for sure that the Xavier Worthy edition, the Hollywood Brown edition, are going to really, really help Travis Kelce. He works the middle of the field. He's the guy that's going to generate first downs and that kind of thing. So getting these field stretching outside wide receivers, not only that can actually separate and help move the offense, because that was an issue last year for Patrick Mahomes, but also to stretch the field and clear out the middle of the field for Travis Kelce. Again, looking at Patrick Mahomes, is he going to throw 27 touchdowns and 4,100 yards again? Like, absolutely not. He's going to have 35 plus touchdowns, 4,500 plus yards. He sleepwalks into that. He's been that every single year of his career. So 5 touchdowns from Travis Kelce. He scored 9 or more in 3 straight years prior to this year. So I really do think that Travis Kelce is the type of guy that can actually come at a discount. Like, normally I'm out on Travis Kelce, but in the 3rd round, like, I will absolutely take him.
Yeah, and sometimes he slips a little bit further. I've seen him kind of go in that early 4th round type of area in underdog drafts, and it's pretty remarkable because I understand with the additions at wide receiver, with Worthy, with Hollywood Brown, Rashid Rice, assuming he's fully on the field and not suspended early on. People may argue, well, this is a lot more target competition than he's dealt with in the last couple of years. But when people bring up the term target competition, they have to contextualize the fact that wide receivers added to this offense are only going to help Travis Kelce because Travis Kelce is the number 1 target earner in this offense. It's not your prototypical ancillary tight end piece to an offense. Travis Kelce is the focal point. Now, am I going to sit here and argue with you with a straight face that Travis Kelce is the same player that he was 3 years ago? He's probably not. He's probably not the same player as he was 3 years ago. But to your credit, you mentioned that he was going in the 1st round when he was that top prime 16, 17 plus PPR point per game tight end. And even though his projection is still 13, 14 PPR points per game, it almost feels like people just assume he's going to be washed.
Yeah, I mean, there's no real difference, in my opinion, to what his projection is this year versus last year. And last year, like I said, he was going at least a round and a half higher in ADP. So I feel pretty good about Travis Kelce. I have never really been in on like the Kansas City stack because Mahomes and Kelce were so expensive. And I love Pacheco too. Like Kelce, Mahomes, Pacheco, Worthy, Marquise Brown, Rashid Rice. Everybody's is affordable in this offense because we saw the Chiefs look mortal last year. And I really do think they attacked the position group that was the weakest on their offense, which was the outside wide receiver position. Their tackle position was a little bit weaker too. They've made some additions and some changes at that position group as well. So, I mean, everybody knows that Travis Kelce is great, but to me, he should still be going in like the late 2nd round area. Him and Laporta should both probably be late 2nd round picks, in my opinion. So the fact that you're getting them primarily in the 3rd round, but even potentially later than that, I feel really good about those 2 guys.
The only real issue I could also see somebody bringing up with Kelce is that in the early portion of last year, absolute stud. He was giving you the 20 plus PPR point per game, PPR performances. He's giving you a 35 point game. The kind of issue for Kelce and why there's a little bit of stink on why his ADP is so low at this point, in my opinion, is that in the second half of last year, he just simply didn't have a game over 20 PPR points. So people may point to the fact, well, down the stretch, the implied upside per week wasn't quite there, maybe because of his age. But at the same time, like you said, Mahomes threw 27 touchdowns. If you could tell me with a straight face, you think Mahomes is going to throw 27 touchdowns again when this is a guy that's consistently thrown over 35, one of the only quarterbacks in the league that can throw over 40, that can throw over 45, that has had 50 in his career. Well, 27 is the most positive regression candidate I have ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, like guys who throw 27 touchdowns last year, we're talking like Trevor Lawrence, Derek Carr, guys like that. Like we're not talking about Patrick Mahomes territory. So for me, yeah, Travis Kelce, I still think he has the same 17, 18 point per game ceiling that he's always had. I think he was banged up last year, which is a concern. He's older and all that kind of stuff, but it was a concern last year. And he was going in like the mid first, late first of underdog drafts, early 2nd of home league drafts. So let's move down to the next tier because we've talked about these top 2 guys a little bit. We got Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Dalton Kincaid, and Kyle Pitts. And again, this is kind of why the Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce's are a little bit cheaper, is because I feel pretty good about a lot of these guys here. Starting with Trey McBride, I struggle with him. I'll kind of make the bear case on him because I know you're going to really advocate for what he does super well. The thing that I come back to with Trey McBride is with Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in, I do think that he's going to alpha Trey McBride. I do think that he's going to have 150, 160 plus targets. Kyler Murray's a good enough quarterback to support both of these guys. So I'm not really concerned that McBride is just going to be useless. Like I'm not doing the Amon-Ra St. Brown thing. Like he clearly went out there and he earned targets as a 2nd-year tight end who was a great prospect coming in, athletic guy. I feel good about Trey McBride. I just think he should be a touch behind the other guys.
And that's fair. I will make the bull case for him. This is a guy that down the stretch of last year, once you actually isolate for when he got the full snaps, because again, we always talk about like Zach Ertz being the stinky tight end that kind of takes the starting snaps right away for the young guy to blossom. And who knows, maybe that'll apply to a guy later on in this video, because it almost feels like Zach Ertz kind of blesses the guy under him for when he takes over his spot. But all jokes aside, when McBride did get that full-time role, he was scoring within the range of these elite guys, 13.8 PPR points per game. The list from week 6 to 18 on, TJ Hawkinson at 15.4, Evan Ingram at 14.6, David Njoku at 14.5, and then you got Laporta, McBride, and Kelsey at 14, 13.8, and 13.8 respectively. Yes, it is a concern once you talk about the overall target ceiling, adding an elite number one wide receiver like Marvin Harrison Jr., but also point back to the fact that with Kyler Murray fully healthy for the season, McBride was a guy that only scored 3 touchdowns last year. Talking about a 6'4", 246-pound freak athlete tight end, you now have an elite number one wide receiver to really take the attentions of defenses and open up that middle of the field. You have Kyler Murray fully healthy, who, I mean, I mentioned he doesn't have a Patrick Mahomes level 35, 40-plus passing touchdown ceiling, but based off what was happening last year versus what we could expect, maybe 25, 30 touchdowns, which is what we've historically seen from Kyler Murray. If he gets back to that range and Trey McBride can improve off of the 3 he scored last year, maybe get to the 6 to 8 touchdown range while still being the clear number 2 weapon in this offense, I think there's space for him. Maybe not the overall tight end one, but I feel very confident in him being able to reach that top 3 ceiling. And to be honest, when I look at the projection and what I think this Arizona offense can become and Trey McBride's role, given the pass catchers outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., you're talking about like Michael Wilson and a lot of unknown Greg Dortch, a lot of unknown wide receivers after McBride in that offense, to the point where I'm confident he will receive the second most targets on this team.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're saying.
Yeah.
I just prefer the next 2 guys to Trey McBride because I view him kind of like he's destined to finish tight end 3 to 7 more so than he has top 1 or 2 upside. And it's nothing against McBride. He might have that upside. Like I could just be wrong about that. I just think Marvin is going to be the go-to guy there for Kyler Murray. I don't think he's primarily like the type of red zone target threat tight end that, you know, the next 2 guys are. And also too, we've actually seen Trey McBride just be kind of like a target hog. And if you're a target hog and somebody's coming in to threaten your targets a little bit, it makes me a little concerned. That's pretty much my only concern with Trey McBride, though, because I do think he'll be 115, 120 target type of guy, tight end 4, tight end 5 in points per game. I think that the boom weeks and the boom production is better with the next 2 guys.
And that's fair. I will say it gives me a lot more comfort putting him in that top tier, knowing how there's really no ancillary wide receivers I'm worried about eating into his target share. And although I like James Conner and although I like Trey Benson, it's not like you have like a Jahmyr Gibbs, a Christian McCaffrey, a prime Alvin Kamara commanding 80, 90, 100-plus targets out of the backfield. So I just feel comfortable knowing that Kyler Murray, historically, when he's healthy, has been able to throw the ball at a high volume, and knowing that McBride really has no competition for the number 2 target in his offense.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. The guy that I do have ranked ahead of him is Mark Andrews, who's been tight end 5 or better in 5 straight seasons. He's been kind of banged up the last 2 years, kind of the T. Higgins of the tight end position, where we're getting a little annoyed that he's banged up all the time. But 14.6 points per game, weeks 1 to 9, or weeks 1 to 10, sorry, before he started to suffer some injuries. So we're talking about a guy that was a difference-making tight end when he was on the field. He was tight end 3 during that span. Zay Flowers, I think, is a big kind of like Jenga piece to this offense, because if he can come into his own as a second-year receiver, and I do really feel like he's going to, that helps the passing offense a lot. Lamar Jackson is a little bit older now. He's gotten a lot better as a passer in recent years, won the MVP last year, obviously, and Mark Andrews is his red zone threat, and Mark Andrews wasn't really there last year. Derrick Henry, of course, is going to soak up a lot of that red zone volume in terms of what they do in the red zone is going to be run the ball with Derrick Henry. Why wouldn't you? He's a huge 250-pound running back. But I think the threat of the run will make the play action game and the red zone passing game a lot more efficient. And Mark Andrews hasn't really had that like 10-plus touchdown ceiling in a while, or he hasn't actually shown it just on the field. And I do think that he could have a really spike, 12 touchdown season or something like that. And we know what he can do. He commands targets like nobody's business. Like I said, he's literally been tight end 5 or better in 5 straight seasons. Like McBride's a little bit more of a projection at this position. Projecting can get you into trouble a little bit. I know McBride had a great season last year and the splits were awesome and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of evidence pointing towards he's a great tight end, but to me, Andrew's just such a sure thing as long as he stays healthy.
The thing I am a little bit concerned of when it comes to Mark Andrews is that this is a guy that when he had his breakout year in 2021, 154 targets in 17 games. 2 years ago, 2022, in the 15 games he played, 113 targets. Last year, yes, even if you take away the game against Cincinnati where he only played 11% of the snaps and got 2 targets, he was a guy who had 59 targets in the 9 games. Now, is that a chicken or egg situation? Is it because Zay Flowers got added to this offense, more volumes being allocated to the wide receivers? Is it because Andrews was kind of dealing with his own injuries throughout the year? I'm not necessarily sure, but for an older tight end, kind of coming off of that season-ending injury, seeing his targets going a little bit down. Again, I still love Mark Andrews, and I still think he's well within the tier 2. That's kind of the reason why I view McBride a little bit closer to the Kelsey and Laporta than I do to this next year, because Andrews is the top of this next year for me, but I view these tight ends all kind of having either talent concerns, volume concerns, or potentially age concerns.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. The Ravens too. I mean, we were waxing poetic last year about the
Yeah.
Ravens throwing the ball more. They were still like a very, very run-heavy offense.
Yeah.
And if Zay Flowers takes a big step and Andrews is healthy, maybe they do gear towards a little bit more of a pass-heavy approach than we're expecting. Of course, they're not going to be a super pass-heavy team because of the Ravens, but I do think they could go higher than like 490 pass attempts or whatever they had last year. So Andrews, a guy that I feel pretty confident in. If you're a dynasty contender, I think he's one of the best tight ends to buy in Dynasty right now, because I do think a lot of people are overthinking him. You said age concerns. I mean, for a tight end to be 28, 29 years old, he's still got a lot of good years left in the tank. I'm not
This
really
combined
concerned
tier
about that.
I more so meant age concerns, like that's mostly the Kittle point, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, and he's been banged up, so I'll give you that. But speaking of George Kittle, I mean, George Kittle, every year we fight this George Kittle narrative of like there's too many mouths to feed in this offense, and every single year George Kittle is tight end 6 or better in points per game, and he's been tight end 3 or better in 4 of the last 6 years. I want pieces of this offense. I don't care that Ayuk is going to get his targets. I don't care that Debo is going to get his targets. I don't care that Christian McCaffrey is going to get his targets. I don't care that Ricky Pearsall or Jacob Cowing are going to get their targets. I want pieces of this offense. George Kittle had 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns with Debo healthy, with Ayuk healthy, with McCaffrey healthy last year. So I don't care that he has a lot of target competition. I really don't. I think that I want pieces of this offense. He is a spike week king, and I want spike week kings at tight end, because I build out my rosters, especially where you're getting George Kittle in the 6th round, the 5th round, or whatever. I'm going to have consistency at my other position groups.
Yeah, 100%. And when it comes to George Kittle, again, I hate to use this term, but he is the classic better and best ball tight end. Like you said, from a consistent week-to-week standpoint, it will hurt his overall baseline having to compete for targets with Christian McCaffrey, with Brandon Ayuk, with Debo Samuel. It's going to happen. And not to mention, they do add Ricky Pearsall. He should be able to work into the mix, on top of already being a very run-heavy team with that Kyle Shanahan system. Historically, in the last few years, this is a team that has been near the bottom in terms of overall passing volume. But the difference is that I think George Kittle, from a talent perspective, may just be the overall tight end 2, possibly even the tight end 1 in terms of the NFL landscape. And this is a guy who has not cracked 100 targets in his last 4 years and has 3 separate top 5 finishes. It's just insane how efficient he is at the tight end position. And we've seen the 30, 35, sometimes 40-point efforts he has at tight end. He is one of the few tight ends you can bank on possibly having a 180-yard, 2-touchdown week at some point in the regular season. So the spike week potential is there. Obviously, the floor is a little bit concerning on a week-to-week basis, but if you're drafting your tight end as a floor play, you're playing fantasy wrong. On top of all of that, I mean, we haven't even talked about the implied upside. He's already been a top 5 tight end with all of those receiving weapons on the field. If Christian McCaffrey got hurt, if Brandon Ayuk got hurt, if Debo Samuel got hurt, if George Kittle just saw a little bit more targets, maybe a 20% increase in targets with one of those guys going down, he's got the upside to break fantasy.
Yeah, and like you said, for best ball tournaments specifically, if that's why you're watching this video, like George Kittle has won people championships, has won people millions of dollars because of what he can do down the stretch of the season. He seems to be at his best also at the, playoff weeks and things of that nature. I mean, he was the 2nd highest graded tight end in the NFL last year, and there was a pretty sizable gap between him and Kelsey and everybody else too. So he averaged 15.5 yards per catch last year. And the only other tight ends that were even over like 13 were guys that get like 30 targets. Like we're talking about a guy that was uber efficient. So for me, I am done. And I'm on George Kittle every single year for what it's worth. I am done saying that he's inconsistent. I'm done saying there's too much target competition. I do not care. I want him on my team.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's like we can break down all the numbers and advanced analytics of why he's a bad pick because they have so many targets on that team and they don't throw the ball a lot. But you just sometimes got to take elite players in the NFL. And with George Kittle, he is an elite player. I would argue he was even the best tight end in the league from a pure talent standpoint. I mean, I know this doesn't affect our overall fantasy prowess, the game that we play, but he's the best run blocking tight end in the league. He's the best yards after catch tight end in the league. And like you said, for being the best yards after catch tight end in the league and also averaging 15.69 yards per reception, like he's a unicorn.
Absolute unicorn. So let's talk about the other two guys here who are total projections, right? Dalton Kincaid, I'm not even sure he's good. Like, I have no idea if this guy's good. But if you project out the Bills' offense, they lost Stephon Diggs. They lost Gabriel Davis. Dalton Kincaid had moments last year. He's kind of like the mini Trey McBride, only McBride's a little bit more proven. Tight end 11 in points per game after he finally cracked the 60% snap share. I believe that was week 7 against the Patriots is the first time that happened. So with Dalton Kincaid, it's like, okay, this is what a good rookie season for a tight end typically looks like. Like Sam Laporta is a unicorn. Like we don't ever see that. A good rookie season for a tight end is like what Mark Andrews did as a rookie. It's what George Kittle did as a rookie. It's what Dalton Kincaid did as a rookie. So I do think Dalton Kincaid could have a monster breakout this year. Like it wouldn't shock me if he was 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, 135 targets, because the Bills don't really have a whole lot going on at wide receiver. They have Keon Coleman, who's extremely raw, extremely young. Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir are fun ancillary pieces, but they're more kind of slot receivers and that kind of thing. James Cook's a running back. Like Dalton Kincaid, there's an open pathway in an offense where a quarterback is capable of throwing 35, 40 touchdowns to have a lot of red zone targets, to have a big role as far as like a chain moving tight end. So with Kincaid, I feel really good about his projection. I just, I know that he's kind of boomer bust a little bit.
And that's the issue. It's like if we had all the confidence he's as good at the tight end position as the other guys in this tier, you can make the case being arguably the number one weapon on the Buffalo Bills is a very valuable role to play. The reason why he's in this tier and the reason why he's more so at the back end of it is that how good is this guy at playing tight end? Like that's going to be the turning deciding point. If he's very good, he's going to smash. If he's not as good as people may seem to think, maybe he's more of a back-end tight end one projection. I understand people want pieces of this Bills offense, but it's just tough for me knowing how good the other tight ends are in this tier to put him up here other than the fact that he plays for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, like according to PFF receiving grades, Hunter Henry was better last year. Dalton Schultz was better last year. Darren Waller was better last year. Like, again, he was a rookie. He can still get better. I'm not saying anything like negative about Dalton Kincaid. It's that he was an older rookie, though. So he should have probably been, stepping in a little bit sooner. We could transition into Kyle Pitts as well, because he's also like, if he's good, he could be really good this year. He finally gets a quarterback. He finally has an offense that's going to throw 550 plus pass attempts for the first time in his career. But with Kyle Pitts, he's been kind of used as this like wonky tight end, in the wide, in the slot. Like we kind of just need Zach Robinson and this offensive staff to just be like, let's put him in the Tyler Higbee role. As crazy as that sounds, that's what we would love to see out of Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I mean, that would just automatically increase his touchdown equity in the offense, considering this is a player that has scored 6 touchdowns in his 3 seasons in the NFL for being
criminal.
I mean, we're talking about a guy that's up there with Brock Bowers for best tight end prospects of all time. They're up there with guys like Vernon Davis. Like, we're talking about an elite dynasty tight end that Kyle Pitts, frankly, should be. Like, that's what he should be at this point, 3 years into his career. And it's funny because it's like, if you had taken his rookie season, made that his 3rd year, and then dropped his 3rd year to his 2nd and his 2nd year to his 1st, you would see the natural progression. And naturally, as fantasy players, I bet his ADP would be up 2 separate rounds if he had his rookie season this past year and the other 2 years were pushed down. But the fact that he's had 2 injury-riddled seasons, Arthur Smith not really knowing what he's doing from a usage standpoint, now you get big upgrades in terms of offensive schematics and in terms of quarterback play. I have Kyle Pitts as my tight end 4, and I understand there is projection in that, and I understand people will be pessimistic on him. But I still think he's the elite talent I saw coming out of Florida and in his rookie season. And if the touchdown equity in this offense goes up, if Kirk Cousins plays like the Kirk Cousins I think he is, or better yet, even if if Kirk Cousins gets hurt midway through the year, you also have Michael Penix Jr. to be able to support quarterback play. And as bad as we may think Michael Penix is, top 6 quarterback in this class, he's still better than anything Kyle Pitts has played with throughout his career.
Yeah, it helps insulate Kirk Cousins a little bit that they drafted Michael Penix. I cannot put him tight end 4. Like I get the upside. I understand why you're doing it. But I've been chasing Kyle Pitts upside for too many years now to the point that I need to see it first. Like I will take Mark Andrews, George Kittle, even fair. Dalton Kincaid, who is a similar projection, but at least is like potentially the number 1 in his offense versus Kyle Pitts. I think Drake London will dominate targets. I think that Bijan Robinson has a chance to have a legendary season this year. It's good for Kyle Pitts. It's better for Kyle Pitts. It's just not. I can't put him all the way up there yet. To me, I think he's a smidge closer to the next guy on this list than he is even to, the Mark Andrews, George Kittle. Again, I'm pessimistic on Kyle Pitts. I understand that, but I just can't do it yet. I need to see what it looks like. If I'm wrong and he just blows the doors off the first couple weeks of the season, I will trade high for him. Like I know what the upside is.
The issue is that if he has the season that could potentially be in the cards, like we're looking at him as being in the ADP, maybe even ahead of Laporta and Kelsey.
Like, I agree, but this is year 4 that we've been saying that. So
100%.
I do need to see it a little bit first because Kyle Pitts is to blame also. It's not just that Arthur Smith ruined him and all this.
He got hurt
he's
too.
Been hurt. He hasn't played at a super high level. Some of the stuff, like he's gotten red zone targets that he hasn't converted on and stuff. Like when you watch Kyle Pitts, you understand that it is partially his fault also. So that's kind of where I stand with Kyle Pitts. But let's move down to the next tier. We can kind of rattle off these guys a little quicker. Evan Ingram, Brock Bowers, Jake Ferguson, David Njoku, TJ Hawkinson. I'll kind of skim over what every guy brings to the table. Evan Ingram led all tight ends in targets last year. So this is a target hog. Brian Thomas comes in. Christian Kirk will probably stay healthy most of the year. That could affect his overall ceiling, but I actually feel very good that Evan Ingram is a top 5 to 8 tight end lock. Like if you want a safe tight end, a guy that's not going to kill you, Evan Ingram in PPR leagues and any kind of tight end premium leagues where you get bonuses for receptions or first downs or anything like that. Evan Ingram is just such an easy projection. I don't really have to say anything else about him. Brock Bowers obviously is the generational prospect coming into the Raiders offense. They don't have a good quarterback. They have Devontae Adams. They have Jacoby Myers, but I feel just really good betting on the talent with him. Jake Ferguson, tight end 10 in his second year. Pretty damn good. Clearly the number 2 behind CeeDee Lamb, in my opinion. Maybe if you believe in Brandon Cooks, he has some target competition there. But I feel good about all 3 of these guys as punt tight end options where if I don't get one early, I feel great about them late. Same goes for David Njoku, man. He was like sun running the rest of the season last year. He was like the tight end 1 after week 10 last year because he was just so dominant when Joe Flacco took over. I don't know what to expect with Deshaun Watson because we keep saying, what if he gets back to Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson every single year? And it hasn't really happened yet. Amari's the number 1 there. They brought in Jerry Jeudy. They still have Elijah Moore. I don't know what to expect of David Njoku. He's one of those guys that I kind of think he's mini George Kittle, where I'll just take the upside. I'll take the spike weeks.
And it's funny about this tier because I view it as like the steady Eddie tier. Like I feel comfortable in projecting these guys as tight end 1s. And if you wait in your drafts, they're very, very good options. And honestly, maybe there's a little bit more upside at the bone than people are kind of projecting. Like you said with Evan Ingram, he is my tight end 9 right now. He's a guy who literally had 140 targets at the tight end position last year. I believe a little bit more in Brian Thomas Jr. than you do. I do think that he's not going to go out there and command 140, but can he be a lock for 105, 110 plus like he has the last couple of years? Absolutely. So I still really like Evan Ingram as a top 10 option. I have Brock Bowers as the head of this tier simply because I do think it's in the range of outcomes. We see a Sam Laporta, Trey McBride level season for a young tight end like Bowers. He has the stranglehold as the number 2 weapon on that offense. And in my opinion, as good as Kyle Pitts was, Brock Bowers was the best tight end prospect I have ever watched. Jake Ferguson, like you said, CeeDee Lamb is the alpha there, but a similar case to Trey McBride, where outside of that, I like Brandon Cooks. Maybe Jalen Tolbert takes a step, but realistically, Jake Ferguson is the number 2 weapon in a top 5 projected offense for the Dallas Cowboys. No real concern there for him. David Njoku was a best ball winner down the stretch. And the only one I really disagree with a little bit is TJ Hawkinson. Now, I understand fully the case here, why he's in this tier is simply based off the production he was able to do last year. The concerns that I have are the downgrade a little bit at quarterback. He is dealing with the injury he suffered last year, a multi-ligament tear at the end of the season. and he is an older tight end coming off of that injury. So
He's
it's just
27 years old.
it's
Not
just a
even
little
27.
bit
Yeah, I don't care about his age.
multi-ligament tear, though. It's just a little bit of a
If you
concern
want to
for
say
me.
I'm not drafting him because of the multi-ligament nature of the
Yeah,
tear, I would point you to the fact that Brock Bowers has a
yeah.
chance to not be the starting tight end early in the season because Michael Mayer
How
could
likely is
take
that?
snaps away from him. I'm not saying he's not going
Sure.
to be like he's going to keep him off the field all year, but young player comes in. Maybe Michael Mayer is playing a little bit more than we want him to. Maybe they're using like 2 tight end sets and being stupid with it. I think Bowers and Hawkinson are both the upside swings of this tier because you talk a lot of shit about TJ Hawkinson,
I
but
like
man,
him.
he was tight end 2 in points per game
I
last
liked
year.
him
And
last year.
he
Yeah.
was a great option last year. And by the time Hawkinson is ready to, see the field, I think whether it's Darnold still or McCarthy still, the offense should be a pass heavy offense. It should be the type of offense that we want pieces of. Again, it's concerning. It's do you believe in
Yeah.
JJ McCarthy or the Vikings offense? But anything else on this tier before we move on to the last one? We kind of just pick and choose guys that we like in the last tier.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we'll go through a couple guys. The first one I want to outline is Ben Sinnott. He's a guy that I have a little bit higher than you. He's currently my tight end 15 in my rankings. I believe he's what, you're 18 or 19, right?
I have him at 19 because, like
Yeah.
you already kind of alluded to, I think Zach Ertz will keep him off the field early on in his career. And I also, Jaden Daniels is a run. I believe he will be a run first quarterback his rookie season. He has Terry McLaurin. Maybe Dotson has a better season. They brought in Luke McCaffrey, who's going to probably play the slot as well. Their running game is going to catch a lot of balls too with Austin Eckler there. So I just think that the target competition for a young tight, I could see Sinnott having a great rookie season for a rookie tight end, but I don't think it'll result directly in like fantasy production.
Fair. The reason why I have him propped up a little bit higher is that, quite simply, from what I saw in his college film, I mean, we both agreed he was the clear tight end 2 in this class. I did see shades of Sam Laporta, and maybe it's a little bit built in, like, oh, I do not want to miss out on this year's Sam Laporta if Ben Sinnott is the player that I think he can based off his Kansas State film. But I understand what you're saying. The concerns are there for the target competition. It's just once you're getting to this range of tight ends where I only have to take him over like Pat Freiermuth, Cole Kmet, Tucker Kraft I like a lot, but there's even competition in his own tight end room. Like, we believe Tucker Kraft is going to be the Green Bay tight end 1, but Luke Musgrave was also drafted in the second round last year, did start in the early portion of last year, where Tucker Kraft and Ben Sinnott, I think, are the upside groups of this tier, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this whole group, I think Dallas Goedert is basically the if David Njoku is George Kittle light, Dallas Goedert is David Njoku light kind of thing, where you're just hoping for efficiency, you're hoping for touchdowns and a good offense. Dalton Schultz and Freiermuth, I think, are my 2 favorite in this area. Schultz because, I mean, I just want pieces of that offense. He's also kind of like a George Kittle light situation as well there in Houston. With all 3 of those receivers, they're going to demand a lot of attention. Schultz could score a lot of touchdowns. Freiermuth is the only guy in this tier, in my opinion, has a chance to be the number 2 in his offense. That's kind of the only reason I kind of like him is that Pickens is there, but I'm not a huge Roman Wilson guy. There is nobody else. And Freiermuth has been a proven target commander for a number of years now. If Russell Wilson or Justin Fields can stabilize this passing game a little bit more, I think Freiermuth has a sneaky, he could be tight end 7 in points per game at the end of the year, and it wouldn't really shock me. I don't think he has a high ceiling, but at the same time, as like your second or third tight end in a best ball build, or your second tight end, if you take a Brock Bowers and you need somebody to get you by early on in the season in a redraft league, I think he's a fine option there. Komet's kind of the same thing. It's like, there's a lot of target competition there, but he could be solid too because he's been a high target earner in his career. K. Dotton, same thing, took a step forward last year, but Godwin and Evans are going to get theirs. And then, like you said, we're kind of betting that Kraft is the tight end 1 there in Green Bay, but there's a lot of young players that need their mouths fed in Green Bay there. But we could probably close this video out unless you have any other final thoughts on this tier. This is kind of just pick your poison, pick your flavor. Hunter Henry also would be kind of interesting in this area. Maybe you like Jonnu Smith on the Dolphins or Mike Gesicki on the Bengals or whatever. That's kind of where you start taking your shots. But again, that is the end of this tight end video. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe. If you want all of our rankings, best ball, dynasty, super flex, 1 quarterback, everything that we have to offer is over on flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE over there for 7 days for free, 30% off all of our packages, as well as heading on over to Underdog Fantasy to put some of this advice into action. To me, the best values on Underdog right now at tight end are Andrews and Kittle, in my opinion, in that mid-tier or whatever that we have. I also really love Jake Ferguson and potentially Brock Bowers too, as a chance to really rise as the offseason goes along. If you want to sign up over there, use the promo code FSE for $250 in bonus bets, as well as a special pick'em offer. So if that interests you, link down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.